Hello, inspectors. I've been to a couple of seminars. I was at one in Wisconsin a few weeks back, and then did an online one in early April. I just wanted to kind of get everybody up to speed on some things that I learned at these. So the first one I'm going to talk about is electric. This was put on by a gentleman named Mike Casey, who we've all seen. He did a report writing video that we used during training, and he kind of went through a few basics. I came away with about 10 things. So the first thing, disconnects. And he was discussing updated sort of code and just what home inspectors need to be aware of. So disconnects. The rule has always been, as long as I've been an inspector, that maximum of 6 disconnects in a panel or 6 methods to turn the power off, and he says that is still in play. So we shouldn't be seeing situations where a residence, or for that matter a commercial property, has more than 6 disconnects to turn everything off. Hang on just a second, pause. Okay, he talked about new construction and the ability to power electric vehicles. I don't think a circuit has to be installed, but if you're running into new construction, there is supposed to be the conduit at the very minimum is supposed to be installed to connect the EVSE, or commonly known as the charger. It's like the little black charger I have on the front of our office. So that is supposed to be, the conduit is supposed to be there so somebody can install it without having to run the conduit to power an electric car. Blunt tip screws still required, should not extend more than a 1/2 inch past the tapped hole. I don't think I'm going to get terribly concerned about the fact that we've got too long of a screw being used, but certainly if we run into sharp screws, we're going to be looking for that, so that will be in here. Wrong screws, pointed screws, so those would be your couple of choices that you could do in there. We all know that those are there. I see those frequently. Pause quick. This was an interesting comment. We talked about GFCIs, and we are required as a home inspector to inspect the GFCI. It does not mean necessarily that we have to test them. Now, let me go to the state standards and verify this language. I'll be right back and we'll bring it up here. Okay, continuing. So I went to the Illinois standards, and we'll go right into this, and this is the part 200 that is the standards of practice, and here it talks about inspect, the service drop, and all this other stuff, and then it talks in here about and ground fault circuit interrupters. So it talks about inspecting them. It doesn't say that we have to necessarily test them. I do want to continue to test them when it makes sense. I was at a house recently where we tripped one for a jacuzzi tub, and I had to return back to the house to find where to reset it, and it turned into kind of a fiasco trying to find out where to reset this GFCI. So if you're in a situation where you don't know that where you're going to be resetting the GFCI, you might want to just make a comment that it's there and that we didn't test it, something like that. So keep in mind there's a differentiation between test and inspect. We inspect. So that, just to reiterate that, sorry, I got a phone call in the middle of doing this video. We should be inspecting when we're not sure if it's where we're going to be resetting them. Next one is panel labels. The panel labels need to be identifiable rooms. You can't have things like Joey's room or yellow bedroom or something like that. They need to be, bedroom 1, 2, 3, 4. So you should be looking at labels on the directory of the electric panel, and they should be, as I say, readily identifiable. Mini split heads. Hang on one second on this. Mini splits for air conditioning and heating. We're going to start seeing more and more of these. I'm really a big fan of them. The head, the area where the air comes out of, should not be installed above a tub or in a shower zone. Basically 8 feet from the tub rim is where the minimum distance you should be. So if you're going to see mini splits in bathrooms, they shouldn't be installed like right above the tub area. I don't know that I'm going to add a comment in our report. You just have to keep that in mind and maybe make a note that the mini split is installed in a potentially hazardous location. Double tapping, certainly we know double tapping on circuit breakers or fuses and fuse terminals is not allowed, but we should also be aware that you're not allowed to double tap neutrals, or if you're working where there's a system they have separate grounds and neutrals, the ground wires should not be doubled up under a lug on the bus bar. So you should always see one wire for each screw. Splices are allowed in the main distribution panels. However, you want to be careful when there's too many conductors. The panels can be just too jumbled up, so you do want to be careful about that. And you also want to be careful about how many things are spliced together. So if you're just splicing together a couple of things, not a big deal. But if you've got 3 or 4 wires going off in 3 or 4 different directions, you should be a little suspicious on that. Particularly be careful when it's going to kitchens and areas that are going to be using a lot of power. We shouldn't be doubling up on those just from a practical standpoint. Surge protectors. We do see surge protectors, and let me go looking for a surge protector photo here. Hang on. Okay, here's a photo of a surge protector, surge suppressor. The first part of this is you should have a double tap in there at all on that lug. That surge protector or surge suppressor needs to go somewhere else. And this shows that the surge suppressor is actually inside the panel. Those need to be installed on the exterior of the panel. So just a quick little comment on that. And the last portion of this with the electric is you may see periodically overfused circuit breakers or overcurrent devices for motor circuits on air conditioning. So basically the power that goes out to the air conditioning. The data plate on the equipment is the final authority on what size circuit breaker. So if you are in a panel and you see a 30 amp circuit breaker with a 12 gauge or 240 volt circuit breaker with a 12 gauge wire, we know that that's wrong, but you want to probably go outside and look at the data plate on the air conditioner, and it'll say on there what is the maximum and minimum, for that matter, size of the overcurrent protection. So be careful on that. Okay, now we're going to start talking about chimneys. I was at a Wisconsin seminar, and the person was talking about chimney problems and fireplace problems. This was a chimney sweep. The wooden form comment that we have in our report absolutely was something he was very picky about. So that comment is down in the fireplace. You should be looking remove wood forms below, so and then obviously take a photo, but this is still a very appropriate comment for us in inspections. Connector pipes for fireplaces, this would be typically a prefabricated fireplace, do have to have a positive pitch to them, typically a 1/4 inch per foot, running horizontally or close to horizontal. And then you just want to be careful how far. He got into some discussions about it, but basically not more than 75% of the height of the vertical portion of the chimney or the vent above the connector. We're not going to get into measuring how tall a chimney is, but you shouldn't be seeing particularly long horizontal runs of vent connector pipe for fireplaces. Clean out openings for ash pits. I'll just read right what he wrote. Clean out openings and doors shall not be obstructed. Combustible materials located or projecting beyond the face of the chimney shall be kept a minimum of 18 inches away from the clean out opening. So basically no combustibles around ash pits and that type of stuff. So and they you'll see these old rusted over hang on, the dogs, sorry. These old rusted out ash pit covers, or they're broken. Certainly those need to be fixed. That's not something they should be propped up with a piece of wood. So note as seen. Okay, talk about hearth extensions. So hearth extensions were something he talked about quite a bit, and we've got a comment in here that talks about the hearth extension being too short, and it has all these different illustrations. You can leave these in if you see fit. If you're looking at let's just say in this case it's a ground or a floor level fireplace, I would suggest you probably take this comment out or this illustration out, because it wouldn't make sense. So take stuff out that isn't appropriate. But hearth extensions and clearance to combustibles is very important. Combustible trim around fireplaces. Woodwork such as wood trim, mantles, and other combustible materials shall not be placed within 6 inches of a fireplace opening, period. Let me scroll back up. I don't know if we have a comment about this. Let me do a quick pause. Yeah, we have a comment right here. Let me get rid of these. It talks about clearance at face or mantle, and this will talk about basically it's one of those same illustrations, and here it explains that there's supposed to be a minimum of 6 inch from the top of the fireplace up to the combustible mantle, and that depends on whether it extends out from the face of the fireplace and, for that matter, how far it extends out. So when you're seeing wood mantles above fireplaces, certainly want to be noting those, or at least measuring them to be careful so that you can note it if it's inappropriate. Fireboxes are supposed to have a minimum depth of 20 inches. I don't think we have a comment about that. Let me do a pause and we'll go up and look for that. Yeah, we really don't. As I look through here, we don't talk anything about that, but just be aware that they have to be a certain size. Like this one might be appropriate. Small fireplace in bedroom. Let's see what that comment says. Fireplace is located, fireplace is old, recommend that you do not use it until inspected. So you could maybe take this comment and modify it to fit if you're seeing, for instance, a family room fireplace that's too shallow. So 20-inch minimum for fireplace depth. We did spend quite a bit talking about fireplace inspections and video inspections like we do, and he was in full agreement with the whole discussion that we have about gaps in the fireplace, purging of the smoke chamber, dampers that are not working, all of that stuff. Areas where we've got lintels where you can see wood, you shouldn't be able to see any wood from inside of a firebox. So the chimney sweep in this case was very much in agreement with what we're talking about. He did get into talking about flue sizing. I'm not going to get into that because I think that's way beyond what we should be doing at a home inspection. But be aware there are calculations on flue sizing and fireplace opening and that kind of stuff. He did talk about where a chimney contains more than one flue, a separation shall be provided between the adjacent flues. We talked about this a couple weeks ago. I can't remember where the inspection was, but we did see where they were too close. Oh, it was a house in Highland Park where they were too close, and we were able to note it from the ground. Let me go find that report, and I'll identify that. Hang on just a second. Okay, here we are. I think I talked about this. This is an inspection that Josh and I did an inspection in Highland Park, and this is a drone photo that I took, and you can actually see where these flue pipes. Hang on just a second. These flues are particularly close together, and there needs to be a separation between this. So this one is probably okay, the spacing here, but I think you've got a flue and a flue and a flue. There should be a bigger space in there. So the chimney sweep at the seminar that I was at was pretty adamant about that, where you need to have clearance. And he got to the point where he said, I can look at this stuff from the ground and tell if it's right or wrong. So keep your eyes open for that. Okay, the next one he talked about was, let me go back to Scribeware, was in attics. Let me go back to the original report that we used, or the sample report that I end up using. And here's the sample report that I used. So in the attic, actually, hang on, I'm going to look. This might not be in the attic space. Here we are. In the venting and combustion air, we've got, this is on the heating section, we've got a comment about clearance to combustibles. So we have the comment about clearance to combustibles in the basement. So you can change this comment to say in the basement, in the attic, and there it would be appropriate, and then you want to obviously take a photo of that. I just used this comment last week. I was at an inspection in Wisconsin, and we saw a clearance to combustibles issue where the pipe went up through a ceiling. So just to make this larger, went up through a ceiling into the attic space, and they stuffed insulation around that. That's something we should be noting when we're at inspections. And then the final thing he talked about was the obvious chimney height, where you get the 2-3-10 rule, where it's got to be 2 feet higher than where it goes out, 3 feet above the roof line, and 2 feet higher than anything within a 10-foot radius of the chimney. So those are just some updates on things that are going on. I think we're in pretty good shape with our report. Just wanted to bring up some pointers. Thank you very much. Carry on.